Hello and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I am Oles Garjuk with UATV. A decisive day for Germany. In only 4 days, the leading country of the EU is going to hold its parliamentary elections. Afterwards, the winning party will be choosing the new Chancellor. Will Angela Merkel hold her position for the first time? Let's ask the opinion of Kostiantyn Fedorenko, the expert of the Institute for Euro-Atlantic Cooperation. Today he joined us in the studio. Hello and thank you for coming.
Good evening.
Konstantin, how is the election campaign going so far?
Well, many analysts have actually touted this campaign as probably the most dull electoral campaign in Germany since it became the Democratic Republic. And I mean, it's quite likely that this label is true because really, there's not so much going on. There aren't really any great scandals in the campaign or whatever. And in fact, even though some time ago there was a slight change in the leader of the opinion polls, now it's more or less as predicted before the campaign had started, and it's actually quite close in many terms to the results of the previous elections.
How do you think who is leading right now? You said that the leading positions were changing.
Well, it's evident that the Christian Democratic Union, led by Angela Merkel, is now in the leading position, and the gap between the CDU and the following Social Democrat Party is something like 14%, which means that Merkel's party is very likely to win the upcoming elections.
Mm-hmm. But it seemed like Angela Merkel got a serious opponent for the first time, Martin Schulz, who represents the Social Democratic Party. And how do you think, what went wrong in his campaign so he dropped down to the second place?
Well, actually, in the beginning, like before Schulz became the leader of the Social Democrat Party in the beginning of this year, the Social Democrats were actually trailing more or less on the same distance. I mean, the same gap of like 15%. Then Schulz became the leader, and the numbers in polls have equalized. Which probably is an effect of Schulz being a new face, quite a good speaker, a definitely prominently pro-European politician, which means a pro-European alternative, but still an alternative to Angela Merkel. But then the effect of novelty faded out, and at the same time, the Social Democrats suffered losses in some of the regional elections, which also contributed to the disappointment. And the third factor was quite recent debates between Merkel and Schulz, which showed that actually there's little to none difference. I mean, the debates were about so slight differences of a position that they didn't really matter that much to a voter. Mm-hmm. So they preferred the alternative they already know, which means Merkel, not the new one.
And Schulz is not very well known as a politician, if I'm not mistaken. He's more known as a member of European Commission, right? Could it be the reason that he's not winning right now?
He was a president of the European Parliament, but I don't think it's a reason, because actually it's often the case in politics that voters demand new faces, and actually when he came in front of the party, he was very popular, and there was a phenomenon of Schulz. There were analysts talking about the probability of SPD winning the upcoming campaign, and then it faded out, which means that it's not about Schulz's experience in politics, but more about his performance as leader of the party this year.
Mm-hmm. And if CDU is winning, Angela Merkel is becoming the Chancellor once again, would it be a historical moment for Germany? How do you think?
I'm not sure, because Germans actually tend to prefer to elect their chancellors for several times in a row, and it won't be anything radical. There won't be any significant changes in the actions of Angela Merkel.
Yeah, but I mean that she would be the longest-standing chancellor in Germany for
Sure
60?
thing, but in terms of practical politics, in terms of anything realistic, I mean, it would only be an entry in the upcoming history books, not much more, and nothing much for us living in today's world.
Mm-hmm. And what do the social polls say about the rate of Angela Merkel and Martin Schulz?
Actually, the personal support, if I understand you correctly, the personal support for Schulz as a chancellor is quite high, but at the same time, he's weighted down by the poor performance of his party, also at the regional level, and some of the ties of his party, like ties to Gerhard Schröder with Russian oil and gas companies, which also dealt a blow to SPD's chances. So really, it's not that much about personalities right now.
It is also interesting, who is going to be the third main party in Bundestag? What do you think about this?
It's hard to say right now because the differences in numbers are quite slight. I would put my money on either the left party, Die Linke, or the Alternative for Germany being the third party. The rightists, the Alternative for Germany, have had the rating dropping quite rapidly in the past year, but now after they changed the leadership, they regained several points and they might be the third party in the parliament.
And what about the Liberals? Doesn't Christian Lindgren has a lot of chances to become?
The Liberals will definitely be in the parliament. It's evident right now, and they'll quite likely be part of the ruling coalition in the future. But judging from the dynamics in opinion polls, I would say that they would be trailing after the left and the right. But I'm unsure because the difference is quite slight and everything may change on the vote day.
Mm-hmm. But it means if the Liberals become the third main party in the parliament, then they would select the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, right? And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would be Christian Lindgren then.
It's a chance, but I mean, it depends not on the position itself. Like, if AfD wins the third position, nothing will happen. No one will appoint an AfD politician to the government. It just depends on the differences between the Liberals and the Greens and the coalition talks between the Christian Democrats, Liberals, and the Greens. Yeah. Probably they would have to have a three-party coalition because it's likely that Liberals won't have enough support together with CDU to form a majority in the parliament.
Mm-hmm. But now the important moment for Ukraine is who is going to become the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and if, for example, Christian Lindgren, the leader of Liberals, is going to become the ministry. Isn't it risky for Ukraine?
I'm not that sure because, yes, I definitely know that Linda is quite supportive of lifting sanctions towards Russia and so on. But at the same time, Angela Merkel will still be the factual coordinator of the government policies, including foreign policy, which means that it's unlikely that something that completely contradicts Merkel's positions will be a part of the policy of the upcoming government.
Let's just remind
you.
So
if Lindner even becomes a Minister of Foreign Affairs, I think that his position will be more moderate than what he expresses now.
Could you remind us what Lindgren said about his approach towards our conflict with Russia?
He basically said that it's not constructive to maintain the elevated sanctions on Russia, that Europe should accept Russia's solution towards the peacekeeping mission, and that Europe should start lifting the sanctions as a sign of goodwill towards Russia. Then he corrected himself after there was kind of a scandal around these words. Then he corrected himself to more or less what is the general European position, that Russia in the beginning has to fulfill the Minsk agreements, but I mean, it's just politics, I would say. It's politics talks and attempts to lure different kinds of supporters within the country, and including the elite supporters, including the lobby of big business, which is interested in relations with Russia.
Thank you. And how do you think, after elections, is anything expected to be changed in Germany, or like do people want to change something? Are people waiting for some change in Germany, actually?
They kind of do, but Merkel is a very smart politician in that she understands what kind of change the voters expect, and she's moving towards this change. She did this previously in the beginning of the 2010s when she adopted the green stance towards the energy matters, when she closed the atomic power plants and so on. And the same would be now. I mean, she's adopting a more harsh stance towards the migrants, which is probably the most heatedly debated issue in German politics right now. I guess that there would be some more filters for the migrants coming to Germany, and some more mechanisms and clauses for them to be deported should they commit crimes and so on. So basically some of these additional safety regulations will be adopted by Merkel in order to answer to the electorate's demands for security.
Okay, thank you for this conversation. This was Kostiantyn Fedorenko, the expert of the Institute for Euro-Atlantic Cooperation. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.